Robert, pleasure to have you here.
Nice to have you. Where do you want
Choose wherever you want to sit.
Yes,
We have plenty of opportunities here. I just mentioned in the introduction your very own story. You out of a merger of 13 companies, so you have transformation processes going on yourself, but also the whole industry is changing. Maybe we start with that. All the regulatory stuff going on, the market fluctuation going on. What are your insights that you see? What are the key trends that you see going on the market right now? And what are the driving forces behind it?
It's a very big question, which can also, I could come up with a very long answer, but I'll try to take it one at a time. I think in general, I mean, we are at the DigiFin conference. You see society is digitizing, commerce is digitizing, which means, of course, massive transformations. We see the rise of e-commerce, which is one of the big trends that is definitely there. That certainly in my time in payments, e-commerce was always growing each year, which accelerated, of course, with COVID. And people staying at home, doing online shopping to a much greater extent than it did. It has since flattened a bit. So you can see, as a result of that, you see valuations change, you see future trajectories on growth change, and that has a massive impact in how the financing of the whole fintech industry is going on at the moment. You see in general, of course, online a massive change where there's clearly some winners and there's some losers, or some that are more struggling with growth, where you see that you certainly see online that platforms like Amazon are outgrowing the market. You see that payment brands like PayPal and Klarna are outgrowing the market. So you clearly see some trajectories to loyalty towards certain payment methods. And of course, certainly in Germany, offline, you see more and more cash being replaced by card, which was also driven a little bit by COVID. So COVID was a massive accelerator of some trends that you saw, which has a massive impact on the industry.
Absolutely, I see that in Germany as well. Like buying a bread or something, you usually pay by coins, and you do that by card. It's like nothing, right? But there has been a change in the past, I think, 5 years. To me, it feels like the whole payment industry has been flying under the radar for quite a while, and that has changed also because of the discussion about the digital euro. What's your opinion on that here?
About the digital euro?
Yes.
I think it's a very interesting initiative. As a payment nerd, it's very interesting to see the mechanics of it and how they envision it. It's one of the trends, of course, that has always been there, that while society digitizes, governments and regulators are trying to play catch up, to understand and get a grip of the industry. And there has definitely always been a trend in the last years that, especially driven from Europe, there's a search for alternatives to the big American card schemes, but also players like PayPal that create a dominant force in the market, and they're trying to create an alternative to it. As a European, I'm very much in favor of that. I think it's a great initiative. But in any change, what is very important is to always think of the adoption of the consumer. So a lot of these payment methods driven centrally, but you can also see that with open banking. You can also see it with payment methods that we all know that are all driving towards a wallet model. That what they forget is it's not just about merchant benefit, it's not just about regulatory benefit, it's also about consumer benefit. And I think that will be the biggest challenge for the digital euro. How do you change consumer adoption? How do you change a habit that people have? And that is always the toughest one to change. So I think that is there still needs some work on that level.
Would that also be the one advice that you would give to a fintech to focus on the benefit for the customer? If you have to bring it down to one advice you share with others, to share with payment companies to stay ahead of the curve in the whole industry, what action step should they take?
I think it's the core of it, right? Now we as you could argue, a processor of payments, we very much have the merchant view in mind. And essentially merchants would like to offer what the consumer wants. And also merchants, they try to steer consumer adoption, and they try to steer certain payment methods over other. And you can nudge to a certain extent, right? But at the end, consumers just want to pay with the payment method that they're used to. They want to have something that's smooth and easy to use, that gives them a sense of security, and that's what they will continue to use. And once you have a habit, once you have a preference, to change that is super difficult. And it goes usually quite slow.
Absolutely, absolutely. I also mentioned in the very beginning.
Unless it has a very incremental benefit, right? So
it does. It does.
Changing from typing in a PIN code to just tapping with a card.
Absolutely.
That went really quick. Once there is a benefit, then it can go quick.
Yeah, if you see the benefit very quick, it works absolutely fast. I mentioned your own transformation process in the beginning. Unzer was formed as a merger of 13 different companies, every company with their own focus, their own structures, and so on. So I would like to talk about 2 points here. First of all, the technological merger. How did that happen? Maybe you can share your insights here. And also the employee moral, the whole organizational part behind it. Maybe we start with the technical part.
Sure. So what Unzer really did is we built on a vision of, if I was a merchant, what is the full suite of products that I need in order to really have a company help me end to end. And on each one of those, we made a decision to either buy or build. But the fundamental thing is, and essentially you could say it's more seven larger businesses that came together, but each one of them had an adjacent product. So I think therefore the Unzer story is very different than for instance, big conglomerates like a Nexi or a Worldline. They bought a lot of companies with the same product suite or similar product suites, and they're trying to merge that together, while we really bought adjacent product suites, where you do not need to integrate them on a central mothership, but they're actually modules that you just need to tie together to one billing platform and one data warehouse, so you can really connect it. Then for the central platform, we decided to not buy, but to build from scratch. So we built a complete new payment processing platform, complete new billing platform, which we launched now a bit over a year ago, which I think now actually gives us an advantage. And I think that's where for us it was a very different story, because we did not try and migrate platforms to a mothership that was existent. We much more looked, okay, how would it all connect? It's a modular setup, and we built a central platform from scratch to connect it all.
So it's more about organizing a structure that works than integrating everything. But that does not work with the employees. So how did that happen? How did you make sure that everybody went smooth here?
Not in the same way, but it is also somewhat similar, because there was not one big giant that bought smaller companies to come in. All these companies were similar size, which we very much did not try and say, this is the company culture, you all need to adapt to it. We very much try to bring everybody together and say, hey, what do we want to be like? And create a culture. It's weird how do you create a culture, but it's how do we all want to work together? How do we want to be identified as, and really try and bring everybody on board that they're part of shaping the future, rather than saying this is the future and this is how we work and you need to adjust to that. In my previous role at Klarna, where I worked before Unzer, we also did a number of acquisitions where it was very much done the other way around. So there was a very larger company buying smaller entities. In Germany, I was responsible for the integration of Sofort and BillPay at the time. And that was much more difficult, because they needed to adapt to a very different culture, a very different way of doing things. And that was that had a lot more resistance. Now, everybody cherishes the past. Everybody still feels identified with the former company that joined us. But I think it's going well.
It doesn't fit anymore. It doesn't fit anymore. How long was the whole process? Like, what amount of time are we talking about?
I mean, the process, of course, still ongoing. It's also not that every company came at the same time, so you really see a difference between the time that the company is part of Unzer and how much people identify as being being Unzer and not the former business. So it's an ongoing process and will continue to be an evolving process.
Perfect. Another very important part of your history and present is that Unzer is not VC-owned, not like other fintechs. What advantages and disadvantages come with that?
I think VC is different from private equity in the sense that usually the stakes are not a majority controlling stakes, and they look at a much longer time frame, where there's a lot more focus relatively on top-line growth versus profitability. While a private equity business would always like the company to be profitable. They don't foresee multiple injections of cash, so it's a one-off investment, which meant that we as a business were always very much focused on having profitable growth, which I would say a few years ago was not a benefit, because we would compete against companies that were mostly looking at top-line growth, and were willing to take top-line growth at a loss, which means, of course, it creates a disbalance from a competition point of view. On the other side, of course, when the whole market took a shift and was looking at profitability, the adjustment that we needed to make as a business was a lot smaller than some of our peers in terms of cutting costs, in terms of repivoting strategy. So in that sense, actually it leveled the playing field and it became an advantage for us.
Another topic I would like to bring to the table here is the whole part of regulations. We already talked about that in the past 2 hours a lot. So from your point of view as a German-based company, how has all the regulatory stuff going on at the moment, talking about DORA and so on, how has it affected your operations and how are you preparing for future regulations?
So I mean, we had our fair share of engagements with the regulatory level in the last years. Good to highlight there, though, that as said, we are a merger company, means that we actually have 3 licenses, a Danish license, a Luxembourg license, and a German license. And therefore, you can also really see the differences between the regulations, the regulators, and how they adopt certain regulations. Now, within that framework, when we came in as a new management team, we really looked at, okay, what does good look like, and where do we need to get to? And similar to the platform and the culture, we really looked at, okay, how are we going to shape it, rather than try and adjust things here and there and do patchwork. So we really start from scratch and work towards getting to this new way of working. And that also allowed us to now be in a much better state, in a much quicker way than I think many of the other companies around us. What it means when something like DORA comes up, of course, when every time regulation changes, you need to adjust, and you need to look at, okay, what do we really need to adapt in our ways of working, and our ways of reporting, and what not, and they usually become massive projects, right? It's a big impact on the business, but I think if you are at a certain level already, then the adjustments you need to make are not that big. It's more trying to shape the regulation to actually your practice from a day to day.
Does it feel for you sometimes like you have to prepare today for something you do not know that it's coming?
I think that's the toughest thing. Regulation is fine. I think it's good, and everybody encourages it. But it needs to be clear, and you need to know what's ahead, so you can plan for it. What is difficult is the uncertainty of future changes that might come and what the impact would be. I think that's just also listening to the panel before. I think that's where if there was a more forward-looking exchange with regulators, looking at, okay, these are the changes we see, how are we going to solve for it, rather than having a regulation come into place a few years after the fact has already happened. That's often hard to adapt to.
Perfect. Robert, thank you very much for the moment, for sharing your insights on Unzer with us, but also for your view on the ongoing market complexities going on. I would like to give the audience the opportunity here to ask a question, if we have one. We have 1 minute left. Are there any questions in the room for Robert? Maybe
Don't be
about
shy.
the success story of Unzer, maybe about the market itself. Yeah, we have one question, perfect.
Hello, only a short question. Could you give us some thoughts or some experiences with your 3 competition authorities? What was your experience in this surrounding? Perhaps some thoughts of this.
The competition authorities or the financial regulators? So there's a very different dynamic, and in my past I've also been quite close with the Swedish regulator and the Dutch regulator. I think there's a very big difference in formality. I think the German regulator is quite formal, which means that engagements and conversations take a lot more time than it could be, for instance, with the Dutch regulator or the Luxembourg regulator, where you actually have the ability to have informal chats and also ask for advice sometimes. To give you an example from a long time back, we would, and we also had actually similar exchange recently with the CSSF, when we were looking to launch a new product to market, you have the ability to have an open conversation and say, this is what we would like to do, what are your thoughts on it, what are threats that you might see, what is important for you, and then we can adjust our product along the way to make sure that when we actually launch it, it's fit for market, but it's also covers the concern of the regulator. I think it would be great if in Germany this possibility would also exist, because in Germany, you might understand, you would have a formal explanation of what the product would look like, and then months later you might get some feedback, and then you need to adjust again, and it's a much longer process, where the ability to have an open conversation sometimes really helps. And that is a lot more the case in smaller countries, in that sense.
Perfect, thank you very much also for the question. Final question from my side to end with something positive. What is the most exciting opportunity you see for Unzer to shape, to evolve the whole payment landscape in the next years?
I think payments in itself are more and more becoming a commodity that it's very hard to differentiate you in, right? Certainly with the growth of some conglomerates, their economies of scale have become that much that from a pricing perspective, they will push towards a pricing differentiator, and that is difficult for smaller, more agile companies to compete with. On the other side, we believe that payments is actually just a step in a commercial journey. So we see that on and offline are merging more and more. We see that software and payments are also merging more and more, and that's where we see a big opportunity for us as a company, where to play a role in that, because certainly Germany, we believe, still has some digitalization to do, and we
I like the smile you came along with that.
No, but it's a fact and opportunity for us, because we think we're very well pivoted towards helping especially smaller and medium retailers make that change and digitize their commerce for them, and move from a stupid terminal to some hardware, software, to a computer in the back with an Excel sheet, to a shoebox that goes to the Steuerberater, to merge all that in a software suite where payments are an integrated part of. And that's where we see we can play a big role in helping Germany become digital.
We take that picture with us. Robert, thank you very much. Fingers crossed, all the best for you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.